There are moments in life when everything suddenly goes quiet. The laughter fades, the company disappears, and you find yourself standing in the echo of your own thoughts. At first, that silence feels heavy, almost unbearable. It's in those moments that isolation wraps itself around you, not as a gentle blanket, but as a storm that strips away every distraction, every illusion, every comforting noise you used to hide behind. People often think that isolation is punishment, a cruel phase where life abandons you. But what many don't realize is that isolation is one of the most powerful spiritual classrooms a soul can ever enter. It is where growth either takes root or bitterness begins to bloom. When you face isolation, you come face to face with the rawest version of yourself. There's no applause to keep you going, no crowd to shape your identity, and no comforting chorus to drown out your doubts. In that stillness, you begin to hear the voice you've ignored for so long, the whisper of your own soul. At first, it's unsettling. You start questioning your worth, your decisions, your path. Memories resurface, old wounds achy again, and fears you thought you had buried rise like ghosts demanding to be acknowledged. Most people run from this stage. They cling to noise, to people, to distractions. But the strongest souls do something different. They stay. They don't flee the silence, they lean into it. Isolation reveals truths that social comfort often masks. It strips away false relationships, exposing who truly stands with you and who was only there for the convenience of shared moments. When the crowd thins, you begin to understand who valued your essence and who only valued their access to you. This realization can sting deeply, but it also liberates. It frees you from illusions and teaches you to build connections rooted in truth, not convenience. You stop begging for attention from places that were never meant to nourish you. Instead, you start nurturing your own inner world. Growth during isolation doesn't happen in grand, cinematic bursts. It happens quietly. You wake up one day and notice that your tolerance for superficial conversations has lowered. You find joy in your own company, books, nature, music, reflection. They become companions that don't drain you. Your thoughts become clearer, your emotions less frantic. You begin to understand that solitude is not the same as loneliness. Loneliness is the fear of being with yourself. Solitude is the celebration of it. And the moment you make that shift, something profound happens. Isolation stops feeling like a cage and starts feeling like a sanctuary. But this transformation isn't automatic. Isolation gives you two choices: grow or become bitter. Bitterness tempts you with its easy narratives. It tells you that everyone abandoned you, that you're unworthy, that the world is unfair. It feeds on comparison and resentment. It convinces you that shutting down emotionally will protect you from future pain. But bitterness is a trap. It builds walls so thick that not only does it keep others out, it locks your own potential in. Many people succumb to this bitterness, carrying silent grudges that harden their hearts. They confuse detachment with healing and end up becoming prisoners of their own unresolved pain. Growth, on the other hand, demands courage. It asks you to face uncomfortable truths. It requires you to sit with your emotions without drowning in them. It pushes you to confront the parts of yourself that you've ignored, the insecurities, the flaws, the unprocessed grief. Growth isn't glamorous. It's messy, tearful, and often feels endless. But slowly, isolation begins to reshape you. You start discovering strengths you never knew existed. You learn to be your own anchor when life tides get rough. You realize that your value was never dependent on external validation. It was always rooted within you. This is why some of the most profound personal transformations happen during seasons of isolation. Great thinkers, creators, and deeply evolved individuals throughout history have experienced their turning points not in crowds, but in solitude. Because in solitude, you stop performing and start becoming. You shed layers that were never truly yours. You stop living by borrowed expectations and start defining your own. Isolation teaches discernment. You begin to differentiate between temporary emotional bonds and timeless spiritual connections. You recognize the difference between people who show up when it's easy and those who stand by you when the nights grow cold. And most importantly, you begin to understand yourself on a level that no external relationship can offer. That self-knowledge becomes your compass. It strengthens your boundaries, clarifies your purpose, and sharpens your intuition. The irony is that once you've grown through isolation, your presence in the world becomes even more impactful because you no longer operate from neediness, you operate from fullness. You don't chase people, you attract them. You don't beg for acceptance, you embody self-acceptance. The loneliness that once threatened to break you becomes the foundation upon which your unshakable strength is built. This is why facing isolation and choosing growth over bitterness is one of the clearest signs of a strong soul. It's easy to grow when surrounded by support, but it takes a rare kind of inner power to grow when no one is watching. When the nights are long and the silence is deafening, it's in these hidden seasons that the strongest souls are forged, not through external applause, but through quiet, relentless inner evolution. There comes a point in every deeply wounded soul's journey when the thirst for revenge begins to lose its grip. In the beginning, when betrayal is fresh and the sting is sharp, revenge feels like justice. It whispers promises of balance, of closure, of making the other person finally feel what they made you feel. It's intoxicating. Anger has a way of convincing the mind that retaliation will heal the heart. But beneath that fiery urge lies something much deeper, pain that is yearning to be understood, not avenged. When you evolve past the initial emotional storm, you begin to see that revenge is never truly about the other person. It's about your wounded self-searching for power in a moment of powerlessness. Revenge feels satisfying in fantasy because it gives you a temporary illusion of control. You imagine their downfall, their regret, their suffering, and for a split second, it feels like justice. But reality has a different rhythm. Even if revenge is achieved, the satisfaction fades quickly, and you're left staring at the same unresolved pain. The wound doesn't close. It festers beneath the thrill of retaliation. The strongest souls reach a moment when they look at this cycle and decide to break it. They stop asking, how can I make them pay? And start asking, what is this pain trying to show me? That shift is monumental. It transforms emotional chaos into inner clarity. Seeking understanding doesn't mean excusing someone's behavior or pretending that the betrayal didn't hurt. It means refusing to let that pain dictate your evolution. It means choosing growth over ego. Understanding starts with self-reflection. When someone hurts you, it's easy to focus entirely on their actions. But true growth happens when you also turn inward. Why did this wound cut so deeply? What unspoken expectations were shattered? Which part of your identity felt attacked or unseen? Often, betrayal opens doors to unresolved parts of ourselves, insecurities, fears, or patterns we didn't even realize were there. When you look inward instead of outward, pain becomes a teacher. It starts revealing truths about your boundaries, your attachments, and your hidden vulnerabilities. Another layer of understanding involves seeing the humanity in others, not to justify their actions, but to understand their brokenness. People hurt others from their own wounds. A cruel remark may be born from deep insecurity. A betrayal might stem from fear, immaturity, or emotional emptiness. This doesn't make the hurt any less real, but it reframes the entire situation. Instead of viewing them as a villain in your story, you begin to see them as flawed individuals acting from their own unresolved pain. This perspective doesn't erase accountability. It simply removes the emotional chains that keep you tied to cycles of vengeance. When you seek revenge, you remain energetically tethered to the person who wronged you. Your emotions revolve around their actions, their reactions, their downfall. It's a prison disguised as power. But when you seek understanding, you reclaim your energy, you shift the focus from them back to yourself. You stop reacting and start evolving. You no longer measure your healing by whether they regret losing you or whether they suffer for what they did. Your healing becomes independent of their remorse. One of the most profound signs of inner strength is realizing that revenge is easy. But understanding requires depth. It's easy to lash out, to match hurt with hurt, to return fire with fire, but that only creates more chaos. Understanding demands emotional maturity. It asks you to look beyond the surface, to confront uncomfortable truths, to dissolve the ego's hunger for dominance. It's not about becoming passive, it's about becoming wise. This shift also brings unexpected peace. The anger that once consumed your thoughts loses its fuel. You stop replaying scenarios in your head, imagining confrontations or victories. Instead, your energy flows into reflection, learning, and growth. The person who once occupied so much mental space slowly becomes irrelevant to your evolution. They become a chapter, not the whole story. And in that space, new strength emerges, the kind of strength that doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. It's important to understand that seeking understanding doesn't mean reconciliation. You can understand someone's motives and still choose to walk away. You can see their pain and still hold them accountable. You can empathize without inviting them back into your life. Understanding is about clarity, not compromise. It's about freeing yourself from the emotional weight of revenge so you can move forward unburdened. When you reach this level, forgiveness sometimes follows, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. Forgiveness, in this sense, isn't about condoning behavior. It's about cutting the energetic thread that keeps you anchored to the past. Some people will never apologize. Some will never change. But your evolution doesn't depend on their actions. It depends on your decision to rise above the cycle. This is why moving from revenge to understanding is such a powerful transformation. It signifies that you've stepped out of survival mode and into conscious evolution. You're no longer controlled by the immediate impulses of hurt. You're guided by deeper wisdom. You stop playing emotional chess with someone who doesn't even deserve a seat at your table, and instead you focus on mastering your own inner landscape. In this state, you begin to see every painful encounter not as a personal attack, but as a mirror reflecting something deeper within you. Sometimes it's a lesson about boundaries, sometimes about self-worth, sometimes about your resilience. You become less reactive, more reflective. Pain no longer defines you, it refines you. And slowly, revenge fades into irrelevance, replaced by a calm clarity that cannot be shaken by someone else's actions. There comes a stage in a person's evolution when the world can spin wildly around them, yet their inner state remains steady, anchored, and unshaken. This isn't because life suddenly becomes easier or problems disappear. It's because something inside shifts. The storms outside no longer dictate the climate within. The chaos stops being a force that controls you and becomes a backdrop against which your inner strength reveals itself. To hold chaos without losing your center is one of the clearest signs that you've grown beyond mere reaction. You've stepped into mastery of your inner world. Chaos takes many forms. It can arrive through unexpected loss, betrayal, financial collapse, health crisis, or emotional turbulence. It doesn't always announce itself with grand explosions. Sometimes it seeps in slowly through subtle disruptions, piling up until it feels like everything is cracking at once. In those moments, most people panic. They try to control every variable, to fix everything at once, to fight the storm as if sheer willpower can silence thunder. But the truth is, chaos is often bigger than us. We cannot always control it, but we can control whether we allow it to control us. The first step to holding chaos without losing your center is recognizing that control and stability are not the same thing. Many people confuse their sense of peace with their ability to control circumstances. As long as life flows according to their plans, they feel calm. But the moment things deviate, their peace shatters. This kind of peace is fragile because it depends on external conditions. Real stability is different. It's the quiet knowing that even if the world flips upside down, your inner ground remains solid. It's not about denying fear or pretending nothing is wrong. It's about refusing to let external storms dictate your internal state. This kind of inner steadiness begins with self-awareness. When chaos hits, the untrained mind spirals into worst-case scenarios, emotional overreactions, and frantic attempts to regain control. But when you've cultivated awareness, you notice your reactions without becoming them. You observe the fear rising, the urge to panic, the flood of anxious thoughts, and you breathe, you pause. You create a gap between stimulus and response. In that gap lies your power. You don't deny what's happening, but you also don't let it sweep you away. Another key aspect of holding your center is emotional regulation. Chaos often provokes intense emotional responses, which are natural and human. But emotional maturity means allowing those feelings to exist without letting them drive the car. Anger, sadness, or fear can pass through you like waves, but you remain the shore, steady and unmoving. This doesn't happen overnight. It's cultivated through repeated experiences where you choose calmness over chaos, presence over panic. Over time, you build an internal muscle, a kind of spiritual resilience. That becomes your anchor when everything else feels uncertain. Perspective also plays a crucial role. In the middle of chaos, the mind tends to magnify problems, making them appear permanent and all-encompassing. But when you've learned to hold chaos, you develop the ability to zoom out. You see the bigger picture. You remind yourself that storms are temporary, that clarity often follows confusion, that you've survived difficult seasons before. This shift in perspective doesn't magically solve problems, but it prevents you from drowning in them. It gives you the mental space to respond intelligently rather than impulsively. Detachment is another powerful tool. Detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means separating your identity and self-worth from external events. When you are overly attached to outcomes, chaos feels like a personal attack. But when you understand that life unfolds in ways beyond your control, you stop resisting what is and start adapting to it. Detachment allows you to face difficult situations with clarity rather than desperation. It frees you from the emotional turbulence that comes from constantly trying to force reality into your preferred shape. One of the most profound shifts happens when you stop expecting life to be free of chaos. Many people live with the unspoken belief that peace means the absence of problems, but true peace is found in your ability to remain centered amidst problems. When you stop expecting life to always make sense, you stop being thrown off every time it doesn't. You begin to view chaos as a natural part of existence, something that will come and go just like seasons. This acceptance doesn't make chaos pleasant, but it makes it less destabilizing. Another powerful practice is focusing on what you can control. Chaos often overwhelms because the mind fixates on what it cannot change. But when you redirect your energy toward what is actually within your influence, your thoughts, your actions, your responses, you regain a sense of empowerment. Even small, deliberate actions can anchor you. Simple routines, mindful breathing, journaling, or physical movement can ground you in the present moment and remind you of your agency. Spiritual or philosophical grounding also strengthens your ability to stay centered. Whether through faith, personal values, or a deep sense of purpose, having something larger than temporary chaos to hold on to gives you stability. It's like having a lighthouse during a storm. The waves still crash, but you have a fixed point to navigate by. People who cultivate inner meaning are less likely to lose themselves when life becomes unpredictable because their identity isn't built on shifting sands. Lastly, holding chaos without losing your center often involves surrender, not in the sense of giving up, but in releasing the illusion of total control. It's the recognition that some situations cannot be forced into resolution on your timeline. Surrender allows you to flow with life rather than constantly fight against it. This doesn't mean passivity. It means aligning your inner state with reality, meeting it with clarity, strength, and adaptability. In this state, chaos may roar, but it cannot uproot you because your center is no longer outside of you. It's within. There is a quiet but powerful turning point in a person's inner evolution when they stop wasting their energy trying to be understood by those who have already decided not to understand them. It's not a moment born out of arrogance or indifference. It's born out of clarity. You begin to see that no amount of explaining, justifying, or rephrasing will ever shift the perspective of someone who is emotionally invested in misinterpreting you. This realization doesn't happen overnight. It arrives slowly through repeated experiences of trying to open closed minds, only to find yourself emotionally exhausted and spiritually drained. When people are committed to misunderstanding you, their goal is not dialogue, it's control. Some misunderstand because of their ego. They can't accept a version of reality that doesn't match their own. Some misunderstand because of jealousy. Your truth threatens their insecurities. Others do it because they've already built a story in their heads about who you are. And anything you say is filtered through that fixed narrative. No matter the reason, the pattern is the same. You speak with sincerity, they listen with suspicion. You offer truth, they twist it into something else. You try to clarify, they hear only what confirms their preconceptions. At first, this dynamic can be confusing and painful. You question yourself, wondering if maybe you didn't explain well enough. You rewrite conversations in your head, thinking of better ways you could have phrased things. You go out of your way to provide context, evidence, emotional honesty, only to be met with the same wall of resistance. The frustration builds. It's like pouring water into a sieve. No matter how much you give, nothing is retained. This is where many people get stuck, trapped in an endless cycle of explaining themselves to those who were never listening in the first place. The truth is, communication only works when both parties are willing to meet each other halfway. It requires openness, good faith, and a genuine desire to understand. But when someone is committed to misunderstanding you, that bridge is broken from the start. They are not trying to understand, they are trying to protect their ego, their assumptions, or their emotional comfort. In such situations, your explanations don't bridge the gap, they widen it, because the more you explain, the more ammunition they have to distort. Recognizing this dynamic is liberating. You start to realize that your worth is not tied to someone else's ability to comprehend you. Your truth doesn't become less valid just because someone refuses to acknowledge it. You understand that clarity is your responsibility, but acceptance is theirs, and you cannot control their part. This awareness shifts your energy. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to prove your perspective, you begin to redirect that energy inward towards self, respect, and emotional boundaries. There's also a subtle psychological trap involved in over-explaining. When you repeatedly justify yourself to someone who refuses to understand, you subconsciously give them power. You place their opinion above your own sense of truth. You hand over your emotional peace, waiting for their validation as if their acknowledgement is the final confirmation of your worth. This dynamic keeps you emotionally tethered to their perception, and it breeds insecurity. But when you stop explaining yourself to such people, you reclaim that power. You remind yourself that your truth doesn't need permission to exist. This shift also strengthens your intuition. Often, deep down, you can sense when someone genuinely wants to understand you versus when they're only pretending to listen. But because of fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood, you keep talking, hoping to change their mind. Once you develop inner clarity, you stop ignoring those intuitive signals. You sense the resistance early, and instead of forcing your way through, you choose silence, distance, or firm boundaries. An important aspect of this growth is learning the difference between explaining and over-explaining. Healthy communication involves explaining your perspective clearly once, maybe twice if needed. But beyond that, if someone consistently twists your words or refuses to see your side, further explanation becomes self-betrayal. It means you're prioritizing their unwillingness over your inner peace. This is where strong souls draw the line. They realize that silence in such cases is not weakness, it's wisdom. Another dimension to consider is how some individuals thrive on misunderstanding others because it gives them a sense of moral superiority. By deliberately misinterpreting your intentions or words, they can position themselves as the wronged party They feed on drama, on emotional reactions, on the chaos that arises when you desperately try to make them see the truth. When you stop participating in this dynamic, you take away their source of emotional fuel. They can no longer use your explanations as material for manipulation. This decision to stop explaining yourself is not about shutting down emotionally or refusing honest communication. It's about discerning who deserves access to your emotional labor. Not everyone does. Some conversations are meant to build bridges. Others are meant to teach you where the bridges were never real to begin with. You begin to choose your words more intentionally, saving your energy for those who approach conversations with respect and a genuine desire to understand. As you grow into this awareness, your inner world becomes quieter. You stop obsessively rehearsing conversations in your mind. You stop feeling the need to defend your character in every misunderstanding. You develop a deep trust in your own intentions, and that trust becomes your anchor. People who want to misunderstand, you will continue doing so. But it no longer shakes your sense of self. Instead of fighting every distorted perception, you let your actions, consistency, and time reveal the truth. You realize that those who truly see you don't need endless explanations, and those who don't will twist your words no matter what you say. This clarity brings emotional freedom. It cuts away the unnecessary battles that once drained your spirit. You begin to interact with the world from a place of quiet confidence rather than desperate justification. You understand that your truth is not a debate topic for those determined to stay blind. Your energy becomes more focused, your boundaries firmer, your peace less negotiable. And in that space, you discover the strength of no longer needing to be understood by everyone, especially those who have already chosen not to see you clearly. There comes a stage in life when the constant need to predict, control, and plan every detail begins to dissolve. At first, this shift doesn't arrive with fireworks or some sudden revelation. It creeps in quietly after enough battles with uncertainty have exhausted your resistance. You stop trying to wrestle the future into submission, and instead, you begin to make peace with the unknown. This peace isn't passive surrender. It's an active, conscious choice to stop letting fear of uncertainty dictate the rhythm of your soul. From a young age, most people are conditioned to equate safety with certainty. We're taught to have answers, to plan ahead, to eliminate risks, to map out life in neat, predictable lines. And for a while, this works. You follow the blueprint, make plans, set goals, and try to keep life within familiar borders. But eventually, reality shatters that illusion. A plan fails, a relationship ends, health declines, opportunities disappear, or the world changes overnight. In those moments, you're forced to confront a truth most avoid. Life is inherently unpredictable, and control is often just a comforting illusion. This realization can be terrifying at first. The human mind craves stability, and uncertainty triggers primal fears. Not knowing what's coming can feel like standing at the edge of a dark forest, unsure of where the path leads. Many people spend their lives trying to avoid that forest. They cling to routines, familiar environments, and rigid beliefs, hoping that certainty will protect them from chaos. But the more they cling, the more fragile their peace becomes, because even the smallest disruption can throw their entire world into panic. Making peace with the unknown doesn't mean you stop caring about the future. It means you stop fighting against the natural flow of life. You stop demanding absolute guarantees before taking a step forward. Instead of needing to see the entire road, you learn to take the next step with faith, clarity, and inner steadiness. You begin to realize that not knowing can be a source of freedom rather than fear. The unknown stops being a threat and starts becoming a space of possibility. One of the first shifts that happens when you make peace with uncertainty is that anxiety loses its grip. Anxiety thrives on what-ifs. It builds elaborate scenarios about everything that could go wrong. It convinces you that by overthinking, you're somehow preventing disaster. But in truth, overthinking doesn't control the future. It only drains the present. When you stop resisting the unknown, you take away anxiety's power. You accept that some questions don't have immediate answers and some outcomes can't be controlled. This acceptance doesn't make you careless, it makes you clear-minded. Another powerful transformation is how you relate to time. People who fear uncertainty often rush through the present, trying to get to a safe future. They live in a state of emotional fast forward, waiting for the moment when everything will be figured out. But when you make peace with the unknown, you slow down. You start living in the moment, not as a forced mindfulness exercise, but as a natural consequence of trust. You understand that life reveals itself one moment at a time, and that being fully present in each moment is the only way to navigate the unknown with grace. This peace also reshapes your relationship with failure. Many avoid taking risks because they fear uncertain outcomes. But when you stop demanding guarantees, you become more willing to experiment, to try, to explore. You realize that even if things don't go as planned, you have the resilience to adapt. Uncertainty becomes less of a wall and more of a doorway. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" your mind starts asking, "What might I discover?" This curiosity replaces fear with a sense of openness, and life starts to feel less like a test and more like an unfolding journey. Spiritual and psychological growth deepen when you accept the unknown as part of existence. You stop seeing uncertainty as an enemy to conquer and start recognizing it as a teacher. It reveals your attachments, your fears, and your hidden desire for control. It challenges you to trust, not in some external force alone, but in your own ability to navigate whatever comes. Trust becomes less about believing everything will be perfect and more about believing you can handle imperfection. This shift builds an unshakable inner foundation that no external uncertainty can dismantle. Making peace with the unknown also means letting go of the need for constant answers. In a world obsessed with information, ambiguity can feel unbearable. But not every mystery is meant to be solved immediately. Some truths reveal themselves slowly, through experience, reflection, and time. When you stop demanding instant clarity, you create space for deeper understanding to emerge naturally. This patience with mystery brings a calmness that those trapped in the cycle of over-analysis rarely experience. Another crucial element of this peace is surrender, not in a helpless way, but in a wise, grounded way. Surrender means recognizing the limits of your control and choosing to focus on what you can influence: your mindset, your actions, your presence. It's the difference between trying to control the ocean and learning to sail with the wind. You still move forward, but you no longer fight against the tides. This surrender is powerful because it doesn't weaken you. It strengthens you by aligning your energy with reality rather than resistance. As you grow more comfortable with the unknown, your relationship with fear itself changes. Fear doesn't disappear, but it loses its authority. You no longer let it paralyze you. Instead, you see it as a natural companion on the journey, a signal, not a dictator. This allows you to move through life with more courage because you understand that fear doesn't have to mean stop. Sometimes it simply means you're stepping into new territory. Life becomes more fluid when you stop trying to control every detail. Plans become flexible rather than rigid. Expectations soften. You begin to trust timing, trust detours, trust pauses. You notice that many of the best things that have ever happened to you came from unexpected turns rather than carefully laid plans. The unknown, once a source of dread, becomes a quiet ally, reminding you that not everything valuable can be predicted or planned. There comes a time in a person's journey when the wounds that once brought deep pain stop feeling like sources of humiliation and start becoming emblems of survival. This shift doesn't happen suddenly. At first, every scar, whether emotional, psychological, or physical, feels like a reminder of vulnerability, failure, or betrayal. People often hide their scars, both visible and invisible, because they fear judgment. They cover them with silence, denial, or forced smiles, hoping no one will see the broken parts. But true strength is not in pretending those wounds never existed. It's in learning to carry them with dignity without letting shame dictate how you see yourself. Scars tell stories that words often cannot. Every scar has a history of battles fought, lessons learned, and resilience discovered. Emotional scars, in particular, are often buried beneath layers of composure. People move through the world carrying silent pain, pretending everything is fine, while their souls carry memories of heartbreak, rejection, loss, or betrayal. Society often glorifies perfection and stigmatizes imperfection, teaching individuals to hide their struggles and present polished versions of themselves. But perfection is a facade, and scars are proof of authenticity. They show that you've lived, that you've faced life's storms head on, and that you've come out the other side changed but still standing. Shame thrives in secrecy. When you view your scars with shame, you spend energy trying to conceal them. You build emotional armor, avoid vulnerability, and try to fit into ideals that were never meant to define you. Shame whispers that your wounds make you less worthy, that your past disqualifies you from love, respect, or success. But dignity tells a different story. Dignity doesn't erase the past, it reframes it. It allows you to stand in your truth without apology. It says, yes, I have scars. Yes, I've been hurt. But those experiences shaped me. They didn't destroy me. Carrying your scars with dignity requires self-acceptance. It means looking at the parts of your story that you once avoided and choosing to see them through the lens of compassion rather than criticism. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? You start asking, what strength did I uncover because of this? You stop defining yourself by the wound and start defining yourself by the resilience that grew from it. This inner shift transforms shame into quiet confidence. It doesn't mean you glorify your pain, but you stop running from it. One of the most profound aspects of scars is that they represent healing. A scar is not the wound itself. It's the mark left after the wound has closed. It's evidence that you've endured something painful and survived. Emotional scars work the same way. They indicate that while something once hurt you deeply, you've moved through it. The pain may have changed you, but it didn't end you. This perspective turns scars from symbols of weakness into badges of endurance. Another powerful transformation happens when you realize that your scars make you relatable. People are often drawn to authenticity, not perfection. When you carry your scars with dignity, you create space for others to do the same. Your honesty becomes a mirror in which others see their own struggles reflected. You stop participating in the collective illusion that everyone has it all figured out. Instead, you become a quiet example of strength, someone who has known pain and still walks with their head held high. It's also important to understand that not everyone will appreciate or respect your scars. Some people may judge, misunderstand, or project their own insecurities onto your story. But carrying your scars with dignity means that their perception no longer determines your worth. You don't owe anyone explanations or justifications for the journey you've lived. Your scars belong to you, and how you carry them is your choice. Dignity allows you to walk into any space owning your truth, not shrinking from it. Carrying scars with dignity also involves integrating them into your identity rather than compartmentalizing them. Many people try to separate their painful past from their present selves, as if their wounds were isolated incidents that have nothing to do with who they are now. But the truth is, those experiences shape perspectives, values, and strength. Integration means acknowledging that the person you are today was molded in part by those difficult experiences. It means embracing your whole story, not just the chapters that look pretty. There's a quiet beauty in scars because they reflect both fragility and resilience. A scar says, I was hurt here, but it also says, I healed here. It holds both suffering and strength in one place. This duality is what makes scars powerful. They are living proof that darkness can be transformed into wisdom, that pain can coexist with dignity. People who embrace their scars often develop a kind of unshakable calm. They are not easily intimidated by life's challenges because they've already faced storms and survived. Self-compassion plays a crucial role in this process. Many people judge themselves harshly for their past mistakes, traumas, or failures, adding layers of shame to their scars. But self-compassion softens this harshness. It reminds you that being wounded doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Everyone carries scars of some kind, even if they're not visible. When you treat yourself with kindness rather than judgment, you create an inner environment where dignity can flourish. Cultural narratives often glorify the idea of being unbroken or untouched. But real strength is forged in the cracks, not outside of them. The most inspiring individuals are rarely those who've lived flawless lives. They are those who've fallen, been wounded, and risen again. Their scars don't make them lesser, they make them real. Carrying scars with dignity isn't about pretending pain was easy. It's about acknowledging that pain happened and choosing to walk forward with integrity, self-respect, and quiet strength. This inner transformation changes how you show up in the world. You stop hiding parts of yourself. You stop shrinking in spaces where you were once made to feel small. You walk into your life fully, scars and all, understanding that your story is not something to be erased, but something to be honored. Your scars become silent reminders of everything you've endured and everything you've become because of it. They become part of your power, woven into the fabric of your identity in a way that no longer evokes shame, but rather a deep, unwavering dignity. There is a quiet, but profound transformation that happens when you stop fearing endings and begin to honor them. In the early stages of life, endings are often experienced as abrupt disruptions. Painful closures that tear away the familiar, whether it's the end of a relationship, a chapter of personal growth, a season of life, or even a cherished dream, endings can feel like small deaths. People instinctively resist them, clinging to what once was, because letting go feels like losing control. But there comes a point on the journey of inner growth when your perspective shifts. You begin to understand that endings are not punishments. They are passages. They are not signals of failure. They are transitions that make space for what must emerge next. Fear of endings is often rooted in attachment. Humans build emotional bonds with people, routines, identities, and situations. These attachments create a sense of safety and predictability. When something ends, it threatens the illusion of stability. This is why many remain in unfulfilling situations longer than they should, not because they are happy, but because they fear the uncertainty that follows endings. But true strength develops when you stop viewing endings as threats and start recognizing them as essential movements in the rhythm of life. Just as nature moves through seasons, your life must evolve through closures and beginnings, each with its own purpose. Honoring endings begins with accepting their inevitability. Change is the only constant, yet many struggle to make peace with this truth. Friendships drift apart, dreams evolve, phases conclude, and identities transform. Every ending, no matter how unexpected or unwanted, carries a hidden order. It is life's way of redirecting energy, making space for growth, or teaching lessons that couldn't be learned otherwise. This understanding doesn't make endings painless, but it removes the unnecessary suffering that comes from resistance. Acceptance opens the door to clarity. When you honor endings, you allow yourself to feel the full range of emotions without being consumed by them. Endings often stir grief, nostalgia, confusion, or even relief. Each emotion has its place and its wisdom. Fear tries to suppress these feelings, insisting that they are dangerous or signs of weakness. But honoring an ending means letting these emotions move through you, acknowledging them without judgment. It's in this honest emotional processing that healing begins. The pain of an ending becomes a catalyst for self-awareness rather than a source of ongoing fear. A significant shift occurs when you stop seeing endings as losses and start viewing them as teachers. Every ending holds insight if you're willing to look closely. The end of a relationship might reveal the parts of yourself that were neglected. The conclusion of a dream might highlight a new direction you hadn't previously considered. The closing of a season might expose your resilience and adaptability. Endings often contain the wisdom you need for the next stage, but this wisdom only becomes visible when you stop resisting and start listening. Honoring endings also involves releasing the need for everything to end perfectly. Many people cling to the idea of closure as a neat, emotionally satisfying moment that explains everything and ties up loose ends. In reality, most endings are messy. Words remain unsaid, questions linger, and emotions unfold slowly over time. Waiting for perfect closure often keeps people stuck in the past. Honoring an ending means accepting its imperfections, allowing the lack of resolution to exist without letting it define your future. When you no longer fear endings, you develop a deeper trust in life's unfolding. You begin to see patterns that were once invisible. You recognize that the end of one chapter has always led to the beginning of another, even if that new beginning was unclear at first. This trust doesn't come from naive optimism, but from lived experience. You've survived previous endings, learned from them, and grown because of them. This historical awareness becomes the foundation of your courage. Endings also have a way of revealing your true self. When something familiar falls away, the roles, attachments, and illusions you once depended on are stripped back. What remains is raw authenticity. Many discover their deepest strength, creativity, or spiritual insight during times of endings. This is because endings force you to return to your core, to re-examine who you are beyond the external structures that once gave your life shape. Honoring an ending means meeting yourself again, not as you were in the past, but as you are becoming now. Honoring endings doesn't mean romanticizing them. It doesn't require pretending that loss doesn't hurt or that transitions are easy. Instead, it's about approaching endings with reverence rather than resistance. It's about recognizing their sacred role in personal evolution. You can grieve while still honoring the purpose an ending serves. You can acknowledge the pain without letting it turn into fear. This balanced approach allows you to move through life's transitions with greater emotional intelligence and inner steadiness. When you stop fearing endings, your relationship with time changes. You become less attached to controlling the future or clinging to the past. You understand that everything has its season, and forcing something to last beyond its natural time creates stagnation. Honoring endings gives you the courage to let go when it's time, trusting that life is wise enough to fill the spaces that endings create. This doesn't happen instantly. It unfolds gradually as you align more with the natural rhythm of change. Endings are often the silent architects of transformation. What looks like an ending on the surface is usually the rearranging of life beneath the visible layer. Honoring endings allows you to stand at that threshold with open eyes, no longer gripped by panic, but with a sense of grounded awareness. This stance doesn't remove uncertainty, but it gives you the strength to walk through it without losing your sense of self. You begin to see endings not as walls, but as doorways, not as collapses, but as turning points, shaping your path in ways you might not yet understand, but will eventually come to appreciate